Okay, let's see. There, we're going to just wait a couple of minutes while our attendees are coming on in. We're going to start in about 30 seconds because this topic is big and our panelists are amazing. And so I don't want to waste a minute. And if anybody misses anything in the beginning, you could always listen to the beginning during the recording. So without further ado, I am going to start the webinar. Welcome to Netcapital Advisors webinar series on women in private equity. When planning this month's webinar, we realized it was near Halloween, and so what scares you? How to deal with fear seemed very appropriate. Fear, I believe, has been more present in our lives. Fear of getting COVID, fear of all the uncertainty that's out there, fear of climate change. These are just a few of the big names that are in our zeitgeist right now. Layer on our own more personal fears, right? Perhaps a fear of flying or a fear of public speaking, or I really shouldn't say it's my personal favorite, but it's one of my personal fears. It's my fear of being wrong or making a mistake. One which has led me to create a carefully constructed mask, right? Here we are, it's Halloween, right? Of perfectionism, so when I was reading the foreword of Gloria Feldt's book right here, Intentioning, which some lucky participant is going to win, the woman who wrote her foreword, Jemiah Wilson, wrote 5 words that really hit me hard. And they were, instead of cowing to perfectionism. And I thought, bingo, these 5 words encapsulate the essence of our discussion. Let's start with defining cowing. To submit to someone else's wishes by intimidation. I would call that fear, right? Fear of not pleasing that person. So perfectionism is the fear that if I do something wrong, there will be consequences. But all of this fear can make us a hot mess. I don't know about you guys, but it does. There's this little thing called stress, right? That just kind of operates under the surface. So today we're here to tear off our masks and look in the face and share some strategies to mitigate fear and to understand how fear is a stress response that is biological and can be changed. Before I introduce you to our perfectly imperfect panelists, who are amazing people and powerhouses, I'd like to introduce you to me and Netcapital. As many of you know, I'm Carol Mirko. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Netcapital Inc. and Netcapital Advisors. We are a 3-women C-suite with Cecilia Lenk, who's on, wave Cecilia, and who's our CEO, and Corinne Chrysler, who's our CFO, but she had texted us that a tree was on fire outside of her house, so she might not have power. So doesn't look like she's on. So hope all's well, Corinne. But Corinne, Cecilia, and I are the C-suite at Netcapital Inc. And it's just so amazing to be part of an all-women C-suite. Netcapital Inc. is a digital private equity ecosystem focused on the democratization of the private equity markets. So if many of you know, our company has roots in the Jobs Act, which was in 2012, which is Jumpstart Our Jobs, our Business Startup Act, which, as you all know, we went through the Great Recession of 2008. So this was, one of those things that was passed to really help job creation by easing some securities regulations to encourage small business funding. Netcapital.com is our digital equity funding portal, which is SEC registered under Regulation CF and allows non-accredited investors, which is translated into like normal, regular people, to invest in private equity. An asset class until 2016 was only available to accredited investors, which means people with lots of money and institutional investors. And by the way, if you're an accredited investor, you can also invest through the platform. Netcapital Advisors is part of the ecosystem by providing consultant services to entrepreneurs as they prepare to raise capital on the Netcapital platform. We also incubate companies and provide valuable investor introductions. Netcapital Inc. is publicly traded on the OTC. Our ticker symbol is NCPL. Cecilia, Corrine, and I are here to celebrate, promote, and support women in private equity. Our webinars are designed to foster open conversation and discussions about topics that are relevant to us as women business leaders. And now I just have to like go to my screen so I could read, let's see, read your amazing panelist bios. And I'm going to look like I'm not looking at you because I have to look at a bigger screen. With no further ado, I want to introduce you to our panelists that are going to help us take fear and wrestle it to the ground. Gloria Felt, I'm so honored and delighted to have you on the panel. Gloria is a New York Times bestselling author, speaker, commentator, and feminist leader who has gained national recognition as a social and political advocate of women's rights. In 2013, she co-founded Take the Lead, a nonprofit initiative with the goal to propel women to leadership parity by 2025. She's a former CEO and president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America, directing the organization from 1996 to 2005. Go Gloria. She has been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Forbes, Time, NBC, Fast Company, Vanity Fair, and much, much more. Now you see why we're so excited to have Gloria. And as I mentioned, she is, this book just came out, I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it is an amazing book, Intentioning Sex, Power, Pandemics, and How Women Will Take the Lead for Everyone's Good. And I truly believe that when we bring more women into leadership roles, we will see parity and we will see the world change. Next up on our panel is Debbie Craig. She's the founder and managing director of Catalyst Consulting. And she has been transforming organizations, teams, and individuals for over 20 years, both locally and internationally in over 5 continents and 20 countries in the area of strategy, leadership, neuroscience of learning and change, talent, culture, teams, and HR transformation. Among all the amazing skills that Debbie has, she's also written 4 books. I Am Talent. One book is called I Am Talent, another one called I Am Alive, Accelerated Learning, and her most recent book called Power Up 8. Also numerous articles, speaks regularly on webinars and conferences. She's also a certified NLP practitioner, and I met Debbie as we were both trained to be neurochange consultants, teaching a program called Change Your Mind, Create New Results. Debbie is going to be here today to talk about how to deal with stress. Carol Kramer Arsenault is our founder of Boston Baby Nurse and Nanny, an agency that provides pregnancy and postpartum support to families in the greater Boston area, and has spread to what she calls the megalopolis region between Boston and DC. Way to go, Carol. She's an authority on pregnancy, birth, and newborns, and she's a recognized national podcast expert, sought-after speaker, and guest contributor. She has been featured on many media outlets, including Fox News, CBS Money Watch, NBC's Mom to Mom. In addition to pregnancy, birth, and newborns, Carol is passionate about yoga and meditation and is currently studying an evidence-based methodology for mind-body techniques to bring them to her, the families that hire her. And I'm trying to scroll down to Betsy. See, like I'm not supposed to be fearful here, but okay, I got it to work. Betsy, an innovator, entrepreneur, and community advocate. Her innovative spirit initially manifests itself through research, development, and design of consumer products, for which she was awarded 2 patents. Way to go, Betsy. She is a well-known advocate for the deaf and intellectually disabled in New England, having led to the development of a unique first-in-the-nation public-private partnership establishing a residence for adults who are deaf and intellectually disabled with a local college. That is just beautiful, Betsy. Betsy's original thinking leading to her company Space for Arts, that is currently raising money, resulted from her experience co-founding a membership-based web business for creative arts and professionals called Art ID. Her focus is on strategy, partnerships, marketing, and sales. She has a BS from Purdue and has completed her coursework for an MS in Science and Tech from Boston University. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Now I had to try to get you all back on the screen after going away. Okay, hi. All right, so now I'm gonna make this a full screen again. Okay, we're gonna get to it. So I'm gonna start with you, Gloria. So hopefully you're unmuted. Are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm here.
But all right, so we're in the sphere of fear, right? And so I mean, you've been, you know, I think I feel like what you've done with your life is so important, but also like kind of, you know, for some people it could be controversial, etc. Like, what types of techniques have you developed to deal with fear? And I want you to then roll that into why you wrote Intentioning, because I bet you they're connected.
They are indeed connected. Thank you, Carol. It's great to be here and great to meet everyone on the panel. You know, I think that like with everything else, you grow those muscles, you grow especially your courage muscles by using them. And as Eleanor Roosevelt always said, do something every day that you fear. And you just you grow your capacity. I will tell you a little story, and in fact it is in the book, and it's about how and it also ties into how I came up with the whole idea for the book Intentioning. So I was on a hike in New Zealand, a very beautiful Milford Track in New Zealand. If any of you have ever been there, it's just gorgeous. The problem with this hike, however, is that once you get started, you can't go back. You have to keep going because you've got a guide, and they're very careful about maintaining their, you know, the environment and everything. So I had failed to do a very important piece of research, for me anyway, important for me. I didn't know that I would have to cross 22 suspension bridges from the beginning of the hike to the end of the hike. And I happened to be, I mean, terrified of suspension bridges, and especially the bridges on this hike are not like, you know, a nice metal strong bridge like we often have, but you know, for on major highways, but like rickety wooden bridges with barely any siding, and I freeze up. I feel like I'm going to die. I know I'm going to fall into the raging river or the jagged rocks, and I'm going to that's going to be the end of me. And this first bridge that we came to was so rickety that only one person could cross at a time. And my husband went galloping across like he does, you know, and turned around and started laughing at me. I'm standing frozen, holding onto my walking stick like it's going to save my life, which of course it would not. People are lining up behind me. I know something has to give. And I finally realized that I have to do this by putting my vision on the other side where I need to end up, my intention. And I have to have the courage, like self-talk, to believe I can get across. And then I have to just start putting one foot in front of the other, and not look down at the raging water and not look at the side at the jagged rocks, but keep going toward my intention, my vision, until I get there. And that is kind of the whole story. That is the whole answer to your question. I mean, those are the kinds of things that you get yourself in a situation where you have to act or you can't achieve anything. And those are the hardest, but the best. And I think, you know, many of the experiences that I had with Planned Parenthood are not anything that I would want anybody to have to deal with, because they often had to do with physical threats and things like that. But it's, you know, after a while you begin to recognize that you need to take that energy and use it to propel yourself forward, to get across that bridge. And I wrote Intentioning because I realized that the biggest linchpin now that we need to deal with as women to get to parity in leadership and to have our equal share of positions and pay and power, it really has to do with our cultural learning about our power and our intentionality. And so helping women to embrace their power and to elevate their levels of intention is exactly why I wrote the book. And I made up the word intentioning, by the way, in case you're wondering.
Well, it's
but I
gonna
want
be
it in the dictionary, so I want everybody to say it and hashtag it.
Exactly.
I want it to be the word of the year next year.
I hope it is, and I think it should be. Actually, in fact, that should be what we're all doing, is intentioning. And you know, it's a fascinating word, because I think that many of us aren't taught to intention, right? I mean, I think this is kind of where you're coming from, Gloria, right? It's
Make
like
it a verb. Make it an active verb. This is
Yeah,
really, yeah, that's
exactly.
yeah.
And I love that you've made it that, and that it came out of a place of fear and understanding how to overcome it. And I think that the need for women to know that there is a tool that can help us overcome that bridge, the rickety bridge, whatever it is in our minds. And so, you know, in reading, you know, your book, and hearing the stories of many of the women, you know, you really are, you know, it's so clever, because you definitely you're not shy about talking about, you know, sex, you know, power, pandemics, and you know, with chapters, you know, that include you know, really, you know, understanding, you know, what sex has to do with it, and and the stories that you wove together to provide, you know, kind of the map, right? The map of like how to move forward. So why do you think this is, you know, one of the best tools for everybody that's listening to this, to this book, this intentioning, to deal with fear? Why would you, you know, recommend this as a fear antidote?
Oh, you know, that's funny because I didn't ever think of it like that, but that I'm going to from now on. A fear antidote. It's really, it's you know, but because everything we do carries some risk with it. I mean, you're in the look at the industry that you're in, right?
Right, right.
There's always risk in the financial industry. There's always risk in what you decide to invest in, or what any of us decides to invest in or not invest in. That you decide for yourself what is the level that you are willing to take, and the more you do, the more comfortable you are with doing it. And if you can start with elevating that skill of intentioning, then you know that well, you know, sometimes things don't work out. So you pick yourself up, you move on again, and try something else. And I can't wait to hear what Debbie has to say about how you actually develop those skills. Because honestly, I don't know. It was just, it just happened. I mean, I did it because I cared about a mission. And I think that actually is part of the solution, is if you're doing something that really is your purpose and your mission in life, it's much easier to overcome fear. And one thing I will say about the suspension bridges is that I never lost my fear, but I gained the knowledge I could do it.
That's a powerful statement right there.
Yeah.
And, you know, and maybe that is all that, you know, in some instances, that's all that matters. Well, I will move on to Debbie. And I also wanted to say, like, anybody jump in if you have, you know, something you want to add, or if any of the panelists say something that, like, you know, just inspires a thought. Like, I think I'd love to see this as a conversation as well. But Debbie, perfect segue, Gloria, because, you know, when Debbie and I were trained to teach Change Your Mind, Create New Results, you know, one of the sentences, Debbie, that comes to mind is you have to marry a clear intention, right, with an elevated emotion. And that's exactly what you did, Gloria.
Like, great. All right.
So,
I know.
Who knew? But Debbie, you know, before we jump into, you know, some of the, you know, kind of the neuroscience and the biology of stress, and like you, I know as a friend, you've been going through a lot of changes. Like, how have those, how have you dealt with that unknown, right? And is there a fear around that?
As I said, 2021 has been a year that I have had to let go of my house, my hair, and my husband. And at the same time, expand my business internationally, bring my book to bear, and spread it out into different parts of the organization, of the globe. So I've had fear of expansion and moving onto a global stage. I've had fear of putting myself and my voice and my views out there in the form of a book and a learning program and taking it international. And simultaneously, I've had to navigate fear of, do I stay, do I go? The fear of being able to actually let go and give up the safety and the security and the comfort and the known and all the relationships of the children and the stepchildren and the guardian children. So it's been really a roller coaster year that's taken me a lot deeper and wider into this aspect of fear, and also fear of a woman, fear of building your own business. We're a bunch of women also in my business. And I think, the strategies that I've realized that I've had, and this has been forcing me to build and expand, is that whole element of expanding our baseline. I think you talked about it, Gloria, is building your capacity. So we all have a baseline of fear where our amygdala sort of decides, based on the neural networks in our brains, how those data and those trigger responses, either internally or externally, gets interpreted either as a threat or a fear. And so I've spent a lot of this year, slowing down, using the pause, using the breath, looking at my brain and how it's functioning before it goes into complete reaction. And really, I think, as you said, Gloria, having that intention that on the other side of this, of the relationship, mess for the last, 9 months, on the other side of, moving online, on the other side of becoming international, on the other side of making an impact out there in my country and in the world, it's worth going through that process. I don't know if you want me to go a little bit more into the neuroscience. I'll let you guide me, Carol.
Okay. So why don't you share what fear does to our bodies? I think that is something that many of us don't realize, that, even the fear that I talked about in the introduction, COVID, climate change, all of these things are just floating around in the zeitgeist, right? How do we keep equilibrium, right? Like how, and what does this do to our body, and then let's talk about, how the fear elicits, a stress response, and how we can, what types of tools are there available that can help us regulate that.
So, we all have this beautiful primitive part of our brains and part of our nature that is a survival response and helps us protect us from the danger out there in the wide world, right from the old days of a lion or something dangerous in the bush to right now today, whether, as you say, whether it's COVID, a relationship issue. And for me, yesterday, it was standing up on the stage again after a year in a bunch of top leadership executives in one of the largest organizations in our country on the topic, a new talk on a new book with some of my new stories. And I watched my brain. I could actually, because I've been training my brain through meditation and mindfulness and, metacognition and observation, actually feel the feeling of that. As much as myself was feeling I could do this and it was part of my skill set and I was going to be okay, there was this deeper part of me that just was responding automatically. And I think that's what our amygdala does in our brain, the old limbic system, the emotional brain. It responds without conscious thought. And it starts just to generating a sequence of chemicals that start flooding our nervous systems. We move from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic to the sympathetic nervous system, and we go into fight and flight. And as our bodies get flooded with the cortisol and the adrenaline, all our blood, all our oxygen drains from the brain into our extremities. Our heart rate goes up, our breathing increases, our digestion slows down, our muscles tense up, and we actually start becoming almost paralyzed if we're going into that fight, flight, and freeze. And we lose the capacity to actually reason. We lose our perspective on what's actually going on. And we start having a gap between what's actually going on and our perceptions as to what is going on. And we move into a completely narrow focus on our bodies focusing on survival and how are we going to get out of the situation. So if you can imagine an impala in the bush running away from that lion, it's got to figure out, how do I get out of here? So it's very focused on the environment. It's very focused on the body, and how do I activate all my resources to bring as much energy so that I can run away and get away. And how much time have I got actually before I might actually die? So we do that. And at the same time, these stress chemicals create a protective mechanism that turns us into real, sometimes monsters, where we can become very selfish and very egotistical and very arrogant and very aggressive and really very narrow focused. And we, in that space, it is very hard to connect and to have compassion and to listen to intuition and to actually solve the difficult, complex, messy problems that we're dealing with every day. And it's difficult to envision the future. So when these cortisol and adrenaline stress chemicals are running through our systems, we really are thinking just with this small little emotional limbic system part of our brain and not being able to optimize the prefrontal cortex and the frontal lobe. That is our powerhouse of vision and our powerhouse of figuring out where we need to go and how we get there. So I suppose my strategies, Carol, over this year, I've really had them tested. And I'm really so grateful for the neurochange consulting work that we've done, the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza. That is a scientific formula through years and years of research to help you train your brain by moving your brain into alpha state through breathing, through meditation, and through a process, whether it's private or guided, through a process of calming that down, and at the same time, helping get into heart coherence, using the heart math methodologies to really get that brain and that body to calm down and to move into beautiful coherence. And then from that state, you can bring your attention back into your brain to be able to function and be able to utilize all the resources and the cross-functional network firing and wiring to be able to choose the best way forward. And I think every time I've gone into this complete stress response, like yesterday with this big talk, there was a part of me feeling completely confident, my future self, stepping into my power, seeing and believing I could do this. And there was another part of me that was this frightened child, being the perfectionist, worried about being judged, getting it wrong, losing my credibility, trying to be more authentic and personal to a bunch of people I didn't know. And I could just feel my whole body being flooded with that. And I just kept moment by moment reminding myself, what is my future self? Calming my brain, calming my heart, pausing, breathing. And from that place, just taking the next step. And as you say, Gloria, it's take action. It's go towards the vision. And knowing that I was doing that to spread the word, and knowing I was doing that because this is the Broadcasting Corporation of South Africa that has got access to millions and millions of people out there. So with a bit of luck, they liked it and I'll get a call.
Awesome. Debbie, you did it. I know you did it. And I saw pictures and you look great in your high-heeled shoes. So
very seldom worn during the last year.
Exactly. And I love, you know what? I should have told us all to wear red. I love that Gloria's in red and you're in red, and it's just such a power color. Oh my God, you're inspiring me. And but I see that like it all comes back to intentioning. Gloria, you've hit the jackpot with your book. I mean, and this whole, I mean, everything that Debbie said, was based in neuroscience and how our brains work, but it comes to that intentioning, right? It comes to like, like seeing your future, like get it, you saw the other side of the bridge. Debbie's seeing her future self, like doesn't mean the fear isn't still there, but you open your focus, right? So that you can kind of move forward and you're not paralyzed anymore. This is just so beautiful. And
Carol, I must just add one more thing that to add to that intentioning and that vision, and you mentioned it right in the beginning, that elevated emotion. And when you're in that state and you're not sure what to do, and should I come or should I go, or should I do this or shouldn't I, or can I or can't I, is to choose and to cultivate actively, intentionally, the feeling as if you're already being and doing what it is that you want to be being and doing. And if you can generate that sense of excitement and passion and impact, and sense of achievement and gratitude for having, even just for yourself, for having got there, and for whoever is with you who helped you get there, that generates so much energy in your body to push forward. So don't forget that piece.
Oh, yes. And I think, Gloria had said that it was, you're caring about a mission, right? Like, so that I feel like that is sort of the emotion part, just said differently, right? Like, so Gloria, you had it nailed. And you didn't even know it. You had these tools embedded in your system. So it's so great. And I do think, though, like pausing and breathing and meditating, you don't have to meditate in the middle of your day, but if you're like, even before this, like, I know all of you guys have done this before, like you get hyped up, right? Like, will the internet work? Will, my hair look okay? Like, because let's face it, we're all like stuck looking at ourselves day in and day out on Zoom. And so you just, so yeah, I did a little breathing before I started, and just like, slowed it down and just remembered, the beauty that we were going to create in this conversation here today. All right, Debbie, that was beautiful. I want to move on to Carol, because we are, Netcapital, we help founders, and, unfortunately we didn't help Carol because she existed before we did. And she's, just a rock star and has created an amazing business in 10 years. But Carol, like, as a founder, like when you were conceiving this business and like dipping your toe in, like, were there fears, that you experienced as you began the business and, within the business, and welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Well, thank you, Carol, with an E.
I know.
I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And what a great panel. And just listening to Gloria and Debbie, a lot, what they say just speaks to me. I love it. What a great topic. It's not something that, I don't know, it's not something that we talk about, really, is fear. But, and I love the whole idea of intentioning, and how that the antidote to fear is intentioning. I love that. So, but yeah, so when I started my business, I was filled with fear. I had a great job with excellent benefits, and my family, I was working at a hospital, and my family didn't understand why I wanted to go out on my own and start this business. And, I had a lot of self-doubt, but there was something inside of me that, I trusted my instincts. And I think I was actually my family's, thoughts about my business, and like, what are you doing? Why do you want to do this? And they actually fueled my desire to really do this and to be successful. But my biggest fear of failure, fear of financial insecurity and not being good enough. That was huge for me. I battle it. It's something that, that I live with, that we all, I can't speak for everyone, but to understand that my success could not have been achieved without my failures. They went hand in hand. And then not to look at my failures as, a catastrophic, or boy, they should have been avoided. That, they created, I learned from my mistakes, and, being able to look at what is failure and, what am I afraid of? But I guess what the biggest thing what's coming up for me right now is the, taking the time to learn and really look at fear. And like, for me, self-doubt was an inner demon. It's that voice that keeps me up at night wondering if am I good enough? Am I going to be okay doing this? And it not only sabotaged opportunities, but it was isolating, and having then moved after a few years, and being able to like look at the fears and what is this really, what is the fear? And it's like my perception, and having an awareness of what my perception is telling me is, and knowing that's not always the truth, Carol, right? And being able to expand my intelligence and identifying what was I afraid of. I had to first become aware of my feelings. And I think we hear a lot nowadays about emotional intelligence, right? And what involving both the awareness of our feelings, but also being able being able to be in tune to how they make us react and behave. And so I guess that's my little, just wanted to add, my comment in there. And it goes along with like what Debbie and Gloria were both talking about, really fear, not looking at it as a bad thing, but looking it as a way to understand, what are we doing here? What's our purpose in life? I mean, it's a huge topic. It's great. So looking forward to hear some other comments as well.
No, but Carol, it's like, I think you sit squarely where many of us do, right? In following an inner compass, and but having to deal with doubts. That it was kind of the cowing kind of comment that I made, from Gloria's book, like where some of our fear comes from this other right over here, and some of it is we don't know where it comes from. It's just there, right? Like, and but you overcame it, and now it seems like I just I can't make this up, but I mean, this intentioning thing is so powerful, because you can't intention without awareness, right? So like what you just talked about was basically being aware, right? Understanding where your fears came from, so that you can like work through them, or just like go, okay, that was just a waste of energy. And and Debbie, like I think you said the word, or somebody said metacognition, is that as humans, like we have this ability to be aware of our of our awareness, right? Like, so more of us need to be completely aware, so that we can navigate through life in a more calm, confident, truly confident, not fake confidence, and throw that perfectionism to the curb, right? Like, we don't need to wear that mask anymore, that because we were afraid of all of these, all the boogeymen in the closet that don't even exist. So Carol,
I've got to just jump in here a little bit around that voice in the hedge. When you talk about that self-doubt and not being good enough, and that need for perfection, and the worry about being judged, and the financial worries, and the brain does not know the difference between imagination and reality. So whether you're really losing your money, or you think you're going to lose your money, when you're really going to be judged or lose a client or be criticized, or whether you actually have that experience, the brain fires and wires in exactly the same way, releases exactly the same chemicals, puts you exactly the same in the stress response. And that led to me losing half my hair from the conflict internally of that continual self-doubt of, do I stay, do I go, do I gain, do I lose, and all those inner conflicts that happen all the time in our brain. So I think, every time we're facing a potential trigger or fear, or something that makes us go into that state of inner chaos, we actually have to know that we are damaging our, we've got to make the consequence. So we've got to have the intention on the one side, but we've also got to have the consequence on the other side of what this is doing to our ability to think and believe, and also our physical bodies, our immune systems, and our health, and how we can cope, and really learn to just quieten that down and believe in ourselves and believe in what we can achieve.
I think that's well said, Debbie. And I just popped in my head, I think we should start a intentioning power up, or take the lead meditation group. Right, yeah. So and we could have people from all over the world participate, because it's so important. I was going to ask you another question, Carol, but I want to jump to Betsy and maybe circle back because I have a feeling, Betsy's, I want to get to this, asking Betsy a question, because I think that, I just met Betsy probably 2 or 3 weeks ago on Zoom, and then in-person meeting last week. And in her presence, I was just like, could you please be on my webinar? Because what I saw was this just force of nature, right? I mean, she's just compelling, intelligent, was really focused about telling me about her company. And, I stepped back for a second and I thought to myself, this woman, there's no place for fear in this woman. And I know that's not true. So what scares you, Betsy? Oh, you're on mute.
First of all, what scares me is that I have to go after all of y'all. Really? I have to go after you guys? Okay, that's fun. First of all, thank you, Carol, for including me. Thank you, ladies. You know what's interesting? I have not read Intentioning, but I'm going to. I know I'm not going to win the book today. But what's fascinating to me, and you each touched upon the points that we all have in our life, with fear. And there's been several stories. I do want to tell 2 stories. But one thing that you guys, that I want to touch upon that's important, and that is when we start out in life, we might be afraid of snakes or spiders. And, as little girls, we're all taught by our moms and dads, say please, say thank you, be nice, be kind, be generous, right? And we're taught all of the tools that our parents are giving us. But when we start out in work, we don't know what we're afraid of. We haven't gotten there yet. Meaning, yes, you might be a child of divorce, or you might have a special needs sibling, or, somebody might have died. And of course, that, those are childhood fears. I understand that. But some of the things that we're talking about today are very grown-up fears. These are very advanced fears. And the one thing that we're doing today is community. We find community in our peers and our colleagues, and we talk and we listen and we try to find some safe place where we can talk about our fears. And I agree with Carol, for me, doubt comes in before the fear takes over. That's that's the precursor. So I'm going to say, Gloria didn't go to the Milford track across those rickety bridges, but my husband took me to Italy and said, I actually said, let's go for a hike. And I had no idea what a fixed rope was, okay? And we're hiking on 1,000 to 2,000 foot cliffs. And you have to go with a metal chain that's bolted into a rock. And I literally had to wrap myself around like the crucifix, and I scooched my bottom across the rock. And I'm looking at my husband going, I don't want to die. I need to go over there. So talk about elevated emotion. Absolutely, I understand that. But I would say, long before that hike, my firstborn is profoundly deaf and intellectually disabled and had 23 surgeries by the time he was 22 and a half. And it was a complete surprise. And the point that I'm making at the beginning, when I'm talking about it, you don't know what you're afraid of because you don't know what's going to happen to you. There was nobody on the planet that was going to prepare me for the fear of losing my son every single day because he was so ill. Nothing prepares you for that. And I guess where I am, both with being among the first in product development at Tambrands, which is a tampon company. I'm like, really? And all the fear that goes with working with only men. You have to find a self-confidence, and you have to figure out what are the ingredients that are going to get me from here to there. And I liken it to, okay, you're cooking in the kitchen. How many of you guys ever follow a recipe? I promise you, none of you do. None of you follow a recipe. You know why? Because it's boring. You get a bunch of ingredients and you throw it in a pot, and then all of us do this. You're going to throw stuff in and you don't care. Okay, maybe the meal tastes bad, you can't repeat it, and it's fabulous, but you can't repeat it. But the point is, you weren't afraid of it. And all of us have ingredients in life. We have recipes in life. We have recipes for colleagues, we have recipes for family, and we have recipes for friends. And it all comes with a list of ingredients. And I liken it to find your community, listen. You know, if you're afraid of your customers, you're afraid of letting people down, listen to what they're saying, get to know them and be prepared. Because I promise you, the more prepared you are when you show up for that customer or the investor or, you know, to that scary meeting. Of course, we all have vision. We all know that. That's in our DNA. But if you have that ingredient list where it's not just the vision, but it's like, here's how I prepared and here's, you know, how I can deal with all those questions and the unknown, we're all going to get curveballs. It's never going to work out how you think it's going to work out. But I guess if I had to add to this conversation, it really is about listen, learn something new. Yes, have a vision, always have a mission. Find your peers, because life is not going to work out the way you want it to. And if you're kind and you're generous, the things will happen and you're going to eat away at that doubt. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, Betsy, you hit on so many points. First of all, you know, I'm a big cook, so like the mise en place, like that's what came to mind, like having everything, you know, everything ready, right? So like all your ingredients, you know, the being prepared, but like just the, you know, the just sit back and listen, learn, vision, always have a mission, and find your community, right? Like, and this is what we're doing here today, and this is what will propel us, right? In ways that we don't even know, because you hit something else that you didn't, that I that you said differently than I say it, but it's like, I believe that we live in an abundant universe. And what that means is that there's enough for everybody. You know, there's plenty to go around, and we should never compete with each other. We should always help each other, be kind to each other, and rise up and rise and support each other. And that's what these webinars are all about. Like we could, you know, this is, you know, women in private equity, because that's what we're doing, you know, at Netcapital. But what I wanted to do with these webinars is to just, you know, blast open the, you know, the conversation to, you know, we don't need to talk about PEs. We don't need to talk about any statistics around private equity or valuation. What we need to talk about are real things, real people, you know, because we need to change the world. The world is in trouble. And, and it starts with us, because, and some, who brought up the heart part? Like, I think it may have been Debbie, connecting the head and the heart. Like, I mean, it's all here, right? This is it. This is the only thing, I don't know if I do this right. The only thing that matters is leading with our hearts. And Betsy, you said it too. It's like, so, I'm, you know, kind of just almost overwhelmed with like gratitude, but I want to invite Cecilia into the conversation. And because Cecilia is just become one of, you know, my dearest friends, in working side by side with her at Netcapital. And we talk a lot about this, and we just love, you know, like opening our, I don't know, our hearts to you guys and to the community of people who are listening to this webinar right now. So Cecilia, what say you?
Well, thank you. And really, what an amazing group here. I just, you know, I'm sitting here thinking, wow, where was this like when I started my career? Because I could have used this. I think being a woman in tech, and particularly someone who was really involved in the early internet, and did a lot of stuff, you know, that went on to become things we use today. I think being in technology and you have to have a certain level of fearlessness, you know, in the sense that this is a challenge. It will get done. It will get done on time. It will come in on budget. You know, all of those things you learn to live with, and you will do anything to make it happen. I think for me, there is certainly a fear about letting people down, but there's also almost a fear of taking on too much responsibility. It's often like, how much more can I take on, and what is that going to do to me? But I think, you know, thinking, I have a PhD in biology, actually. So a lot of what Debbie said about the physical reaction, I think is so true. I mean, you can feel it. You can feel your heart rate, you can feel your blood pressure, you can feel all of that when you start to really get tense and afraid and anxious, and, you know, how am I going to sort through this? Gloria, I loved your story about the bridge, because I suffered for most of my life with a fear of heights, and that was very bad because my husband's a paleontologist. And if I wanted to go anywhere, there was likely to be something really scary. And just that whole idea of saying, I want to do this. Doing this is more important to me than the fear I will encounter along the way. And I finally pretty much got rid of it. I've pretty much gotten rid of the fear of heights, although it took years. And I've been amazed at what I can actually do now. But it really is learning, and I'm not very good at it, learning to set aside the fear so that you can move forward. And that, I think, is very, very hard to do. And I welcome this. I will look at all of your LinkedIn and your advice, because I think that's something, if we're going to move past this very fearful time in our history, we're going to need to figure out how to put that aside so we can move forward. It's going to be there. You know, you can't deny that it's, but you really do need to look at what you want to come out of this time, as opposed to living the fear of it.
It's so true. And you know, one of the things that I've been trying to do during this whole time is be the example for other people, right? Be the example of love and kindness and beauty and
you are, Carol. You really are.
Thank you. But I believe that if we set examples instead of preaching about it, that people will want what we're doing, right? It's like when Harry met Sally, right? It's like I want what she's what she's having, right? It's like, so if you live joyfully, hopefully other people will want to be like, what are you doing to be joyful, right? Like, what is it? And so, you know, and then and share the idea of, like, you know, really living in, you know, in your heart, and also, you know, I mean, vulnerable. Like, I think that I think showing emotion is so important, and I think that's something that a lot of women in particular have been afraid of, is showing our vulnerability. I think, you know, crying, or, you know, having your feelings hurt and being sensitive, we've had to suppress. And I think there's power in you know, being really authentically ourselves. And what I see in this group is, you know, the ability. I don't see anybody scared in this group, because we came and we bared ourselves open, you know, in a public forum, right? Like, talk about bravery. And I think hopefully this is going to give men and women who are listening to this webinar, or anybody who listens to it, you know, as a recording, like, an invitation to do the same. Because when we, you know, show up, you know, with beauty and love and open hearts and authentic behavior, you know, we're going to change the world. And that's my intention. I'm intentioning. So I want everybody to just go around and, of course, I know everybody looks different on the screen. So Debbie, you're at the top, my top left. So I'm going to say like, so I want everybody's final words on fear and yeah, so just anything you want to conclude with.
Thanks, Carol. And I love the vision and the intention to change the world and to build a better place. And the one thing that's really come through so big for me in the last 2 years is this aspect of trust. If we really trusted ourselves and deeply listened through that calm space to that part of ourselves that we really need to listen to, that soul calling, the one that chooses me, the one that listens when we need to shift direction, and that we can trust others, and also through intuition, trust the people that are our tribe, people that will have our back, and trust that we'll learn. If it doesn't work out, we'll learn through those people. And the biggest trust for me is trusting that we do live in an abundant, loving universe that has got our backs and is heading in a direction and is going to somehow hold us and care for us, whether we're learning and it's really terrible for a while, or whether we're rising up and having an amazing achievement time for a while and riding that roller coaster. Trusting that our hearts will lead us to where we need to go, for me, has been the biggest gift.
Beautiful, Debbie. Carol with an E.
Okay, just want to unmute myself. Yeah, so just the wrapping up, like my last thoughts about it, just like really mastering our emotions, and like fear and self-doubt, they feel like they're facts, but really they're just emotions that are only as powerful as we allow them to be. And acknowledging those feelings for what they are and trying not to let them distort your reality, right? And learning to recognize fear for what it is can help us to master it. And we live in an abundant world. And when we lead with the heart, we can't go wrong. I've tried it both ways. I've tried everything, and I'm leaning towards what works. And like when I lead with my heart, it hasn't let me down yet.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
It's beautiful, Carol. Thank you. Gloria.
So you started off with a quote from Jamia,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to give you another quote from Jamia, not one that she wrote, but one that she told me at another time. And one of the reasons why I so value her and everything that she has to say about her view of the world. Choose power over fear. Choose power over fear.
Wow.
And that really resonated so much with me when she said that to me first when she was maybe 30 years old, maybe not quite. Such a wise young woman, I have to tell you. But that and Carol, your phrasing of the antidote to fear is intentioning is going to be my next tweet.
Awesome.
We'll have to follow you, Gloria.
Oh dear. This has really been great though. Thank you.
No, thank you, Gloria. Thank you so much. And Betsy. Oh, you're mute again.
Sorry, I always forget that. How long have we been dealing with Zoom? A year and a half?
What do they say? That's the phrase of 2020. I mean, we've rolled it into 2021.
Unmute.
I'd like to follow on something that Debbie said, which really hit a nerve for me in a good way. And that is when you're in the place of fear, it's a very selfish place because you're the impala and you have to beat tracks, right? And so you're just into yourself. But it feeds into something that I do when I get frozen. And I took a tactic a few months ago in business. And it goes along with what I was talking about with community. Do something kind, do something generous to get yourself out of that selfish mode. And what I ended up doing, I I pick up the phone with every single customer that joins Space for Arts. And I just say, hi, welcome, how are you? Tell me about you. And I can't begin to tell you, just sitting there and the power of listening and the power of being generous. I just want to hear about your business. Tell me how I can help. Has changed the face of our business, but it also changes my relationship with fear. And it helped me to the point that I was making earlier about, well, what are the ingredients that you're bringing to your recipe? And everybody needs to have an ingredient. There's these beautiful, everything that everybody is saying is fabulous. But just remember, there has to be an ingredient that gets you around it and fixes it and gets you out of that place. For me, it's kindness and generosity and finding community. It might be something different for everybody out there. But you can't go wrong with doing something like that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Cecilia?
So for me, everything has resonated so much here. Community is so important. Having people you can rely on. Like, for example, no electricity, and I'm in the new house of a young adult friend of mine. And so I'm celebrating how beautifully he's decorated his home. And, having that's important, and just the trusting of people, intention, thinking of your intention, putting aside your fears. And I think being aware of how your body is responding to the situation you're in is for me really important, particularly in maintaining, some semblance of health. But this has just been fabulous, and there's so much to think about. I'll be doing that all night. I'll be like 3 o'clock in the morning. What did they say?
The good news is we record it. So sadly, we are at the end of this beautiful conversation. I really am so deeply grateful. Just Debbie, Carol, Gloria, Betsy, Cecilia, and Sophia for being, in the background. And by the way, Sophia let me know that the 44th person who that was the number I picked for the winner is actually Cynthia Winning. So I don't know if you're on the call, but you will be receiving a copy of this beautiful book. And so Cynthia was one of the founders who raised some money on Netcapital. And my intention for you, Cynthia, is to sell out all the By Mune on Amazon and help everybody not be sick this winter. So anyway, so I believe that we kicked fear to the curb, and we have lots of tools, and I'm grateful. Thank you all. Thank you for all of the people who attended the webinar and all of those who will be listening to the recording. We love you for following us and being part of these conversations. Until next time, mwah to everybody, and thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. This is Carol Mirko from Netcapital. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
A wonderful day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well.